In this episode of BRM TV, putting the O into WOW, Durham Street, an O-gauge shed layout that uses C&L fine-scale track building systems. Plus, miniature baseboard basics with Phil Parker, and I upgrade one of our exclusive subscription wagon gifts, now available from our website worldofrailways.co.uk. Stay tuned.
I bought my first loco about 3 or so years ago. I wanted an O-gauge engine. Far end of the layout, we've got the turntable, which was one that was actually made for us by Greenwood Models, and that is fully automatic. You touch a button and it turns and lines up, and your locos can then come on and off. Hello, my name's Ian and welcome to Durham Street. Initially, the idea came from my first layout, which was called Haymarket Cross, which was a double O layout, and we decided that it would be nice to have a go at doing something with O-gauge. As some people say, it's Haymarket Cross with steroids. The detail on some of these locos is tremendous. We designed the idea with the different skill sets within the club. We built the baseboards, fitted all the track, made the points, did all the electrics, and gradually worked through it over a period of two to 3 years. Well, Haymarket Cross being double O, that was actually based on Scarborough Shed in the mid to late 50s. Again, it was a northeastern pattern shed, but it was an 8-road shed, and it was quite big. Even though it only had a few locos that were shedded there, in the summer months we had lots and lots of locos that used to come to Scarborough. The coaling stage was a different idea to this. The coal wagons would come in, they would go up the gradient, and then they would be tipped out into the coaling stage, where the workmen would shovel the coal in, and then they would be tipped over the edge and down into the tenders of the locomotives, and that's how it was all done. But the majority of the stuff that you're seeing on the layout has been scratch built. It starts off with a material called Foamex, which is a type of plastic, and then once we've built whatever it is we were building, we then add some special brick paper to it, which is embossed. It comes from a guy in Greece, of all places, who supplies it, and it's wonderful stuff. You can feel it's like brick. It just feels like bricks. So it's great to use. They do different shades that you can use. All the tiles on the roofs are all done from, I think it's 330 gram dark grey card that I printed a graph on the computer, and then half cut through it, and then have to cut each tile individually, which takes, as you can imagine, a lot of time. The guttering, would you believe, is umbrella stays from broken umbrellas that we've fitted onto the bottom of the slates, and then the pipe work is brass pipe that is bent to give the effect of the downpipe. The lights are made by a company called BRM Electronics, a member of our club, would you believe, who built all the lamps on Haymarket Cross for me, and they do work. And obviously we've gone up a scale to the O-gauge, and he's done a wonderful job on those. We've had lots of people asking about those, and he's really retired now. He didn't want to do any more work, but he's getting more and more work coming in, so we'll see where we go with that one. The DCC system that we've got on here is Digitrax, which is an American-made product. The reason that we've chosen it for this layout is because I'd used it on my previous layout, but also we've got 2 or 3 members in our club that are also using the Digitrax system. The nice thing with it is there are lots of extras that you can buy. As your layout grows, you can add other parts into the system which will cope with the extra locos that you're going to be running. And that's the main reason that we've got it. We're really enjoying running it. Anybody that wants to get into O gauge, you couldn't have picked a better time. There are so many things available now that you can purchase without having to have them made. The diesels, the steam, there's lots of accessories available. The O gauge Guild is definitely worth being involved with. They support many of the shows that we go to, and you get a lot of help from them when you get stuck with anything. I wanted an O gauge engine, and I bought an A4, which is my favourite locos, and I shouldn't have done that because I've ended up building an O gauge layout, and I've built one of my own, and from there I've bought a lot of locomotives.
It's wagon time in the studio, and I just thought I'd explain a little bit about these 16-ton mineral wagons. So about 5 or 6 months ago now, just before the lockdown commenced, I approached Dapol and said, "Hey Dapol, do you mind producing some exclusive wagons for us as part of a subscription deal that we'd be doing on the stands at the various shows?" And then suddenly, out of nowhere, COVID. So we weren't able to attend any of the shows that we were hoping to go to, and we've still got the wagons available. So if you go to our website at www.world-of-railways.co.uk, you can take advantage at the moment of some great subscription deals to the magazine, and you get yourself a free 16-ton mineral wagon. Now these two, I'll need to explain a little bit about the background history of them. These are the standard Dapol 16-ton mineral wagon, but they've been produced in these two exclusive liveries to us at the magazine, so you won't find these anywhere else. One for the later period modeler, sort of late 60s, beginning of the 70s, probably more so 70s into early 80s, carrying the tops code there of MCV. And then the other one, which is ideal for steam era modelers with the standard markings for a 16-ton mineral wagon there. And let's start with this one. They lingered on right into the early 80s, and there were a whole host of different modifications that were carried out on them. Quite often they had the doors welded, plated over, sides were repaired, they were all mangled and bashed. Buffers were regularly changed for better types, these being the early BR spindle types. So sometimes they had hydraulic buffers fitted, sometimes they had stockier, beefier buffers fitted. No couplings on this wagon. And we've got the tension lock coupling here, so I thought let's get rid of those. Let's replace these with some screw link shackles as they were on these wagons, and let's see if we can do something to improve the brake gear and also the wheels themselves. They've got quite a bit of a deep dish to them. Other items that I have here include some white metal brake components, got some brake levers, we've got a vacuum cylinder there. Again, we've got some V-hangers with some more brake gear, and we've got some turned brass buffers which are sprung. So let's start with paring away some of the detail on the underside of the wagon. Now quite easily it comes away with one screw there, so big Phillips screwdriver because it's quite a chunky screw, and away comes the chassis. So this is a new scalpel from Gauge Master. It's reference GM578. And you can see you've got different settings there depending on how far out you want the blade to be. And I find this one in the tool bag or the toolbox, when you do that, when you're rummaging for other tools, you're not stabbing yourself with that blade that's already in there. And I think we're just going to take out the wheels to start with, put those to one side, and I'm going to start paring away the detail here. So the tops code that we've got here, MCV, I know was fitted with clasp brakes. That means brake shoes on both sides of each axle. So I'm going to save these brake shoes here on the inside and fit them to the outside, and then we'll add this in the middle, and hopefully it'll look the part. So let's just start removing some of the detail. So just paring away that detail, I'm just going to tidy it up with a little needle file down the side here, working it into the angles, because you can't get into every single little part with that scalpel. And we don't want to create a gouge or anything, but same time we don't want to remove too many of the rivet detail that's down the side of the wagon, but I think that's about there. Okay. So we're now going to look at removing some of the detail on the underside of the underframe, and to do that the easiest way is just to get a pair of Juron shears and simply, not even removing the screw this time, cut it away like that. Now this might look like complete butchery, but it's the underside of the wagon and this detail won't be visible when it's the right way up on the layout. So we just get rid of those little bits there and tidy it up as best we can. Same goes for the couplings, so those can come off quite easily as well. Chop one off that side, the other off that side. And I'm going to do the same with the buffers. Now I'm going to change the buffers. So we've got the choice here. We can either remove these heads, which look actually okay, and save them for another project. I'm just going to give that a go with a pair of pliers and see if they actually come out. They do. So we can put those to one side. Waste not, want not. Let's keep those. You never know. You might need some buffers later on if you have a wagon where one goes missing. And then we can just do the same with the shears and cut the buffer shanks off completely flush. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. You can start to see now we've pared away pretty much all the detail on this chassis, which means that we can just use a sanding stick and just tidy up some of these little bits that remain on the chassis. So I've got a little pin vise here which is loaded with a 2mm diameter drill bit, and I'm just going to line it up with the centre line of one of those buffers there, and a few twists and it should be through this soft plastic in no time at all. And this is going to be for our buffer shank to be able to fit through. They're sprung buffers, so you want to be able to have them working. Now I know that this wagon, the buffer height was correct, but quite often if you've made something from a kit or you're using, just trying to adapt an old chassis or something like that, the buffers might not align with modern rolling stock. So if you're not sure, just fit the axles to the wheels, get yourself a little scrap piece of track, plop it on the track against the right height of 3-4 wagons that you know are the correct height, and just make sure that the centre line is aligned as best you can. So just before fitting the buffers, I'm just going to open up some of the areas there behind them with these little rotary carving bits. Now you can buy these as part of a set. This one here from Rotorcraft is available from a number of different suppliers. You'll find them in the advertising section of the magazine. But you get different sorts there, and these can fit in a little mini drill, or alternatively you can fit them to pin vices, that sort of thing. But I'm just going to go in with hand and take out all that plastic behind, because I want to be able to fit these in. And you can see that behind the shank of the buffer, when you compress the buffer head, there's a little bit that protrudes, and I don't want that hitting the wagon sole bars there down the side. So if we just push that in, just to make sure, it should be a snug fit. If I just compress that, you can see that there is space there at the side to be able to do that. I'm just going to go around the wagon and test that all of these are okay before super gluing them into position, and then we can get super gluing the couplings at the same time, and then this thing is going to be ready for applying some brakes to it. So yeah, I think time to get out the super glue now. Okay, top tip with super glue. I'm just going to get some very quick setting super glue here. This is from Deluxe Materials. It's rocket hot, very, very liquid, or viscous is probably the right word to use, super glue. I'm going to cut off a little piece of wire here, and rather than apply loads of super glue all over everything, I'm just going to apply a little bit onto this piece of paper. And then from that blob I can use this as a little sort of spatula spreading tool to put enough around the inside of where I'm going to fit the buffer. Plenty on there. And then we can just push this into position. Use a pair of pliers just to rotate it and make sure that it's square with the sole bar. Okay, so buffers are on, couplings are on, it's all looking good so far. Now it's just about adding more detail to it, and one of the areas where you will tend to notice more detail, and something that we're starting to see more and more of on ready-to-run wagons is on the underframe of the wagon. So I've got some white metal components here, just some brake gear. This used to be from the ABS range, sadly no longer available, but can be found still second-hand, auction websites, your local model shop, that sort of thing. So look out for those. I'm just going to tidy up the flash so you can see before as it's come off the machine and after tidying off all that flash around there. And for that I'm just going to use this little scalpel. It's white metal, really soft, very thin flash, so it just comes off a breeze like that. And you can see just working it into all the different angles there. One of the things that I hate about adding detail to wagons is detail that won't stay put, and by that I mean if you start handling the wagon, I hate stuff that falls off, and because we're going to be super gluing things on, I like to have a nice surface area to be able to glue to the wagon. So, case in point, these brake shoes here have this backing piece which is designed to fit onto a kit in which they were supplied with. The wagon underframe, however, as you can see, is solid and it's too low down there. Now I could just cut all this top section off and just super glue on these 4 very thin points, but that's not an awful lot of surface area to glue to the underside of the wagon. So what I'm going to do is cut away some of this plastic here with the knife, and then I'll be able to glue this flush to the back of the sole bars here, and that'll give it a nice good strong bond. So let's get cracking. So 2 little bits of plastic are now removed. You'll see me use the steel rule on the inside bits there, and I just use the sole bar to cut against the other edge there. Just need to clean them up with a file now. And this not only makes sure that it's nice and smooth and level, but also gives us, yet again, another good key on that plastic for the super glue to adhere to. Then we can just do a dry run. Now a dry run is when you take a component and you test fit its installation to make sure that everything lines up where it should do, and that you haven't used the adhesive to start with, because once you commit to using a glue, then obviously you've got a set time to work with that component. So this way you can at least move things around and check that everything fits. Okay, so we're in the final throes now of putting this wagon together. I've just used a little tension lock coupling that I've cut the end off there, because on these on the brake gear you always have a crank which is opposing to the one on the other side, because obviously the force is turning on this piece of bar. You can crank it down on that side to apply the brakes, but on the other side it needs to go the other way around. Now I haven't got the exact correct white metal moulding for that, so what I'm going to do is a little bit of a cheat. I'm going to glue this little bit of coupling to it, fix the little lever to that on the outside there, and because it's only going to be seen from one side on the layout, then hopefully nobody will notice. And the only other thing is the vacuum cylinder, which I can just add a little blob of glue there to the underside. And you always want to make sure that your pivot point here is parallel to the brake tie rod. So put that to one side there. Now if you want, you can cut a piece of nickel silver wire or brass rod or something like that to the correct length, and then just glue it there between them. So this one here I'm just going to do by eye. Let's just work out what this should be. It's around about there in length, I think. Cut that with Azuran shears. We can grab ourselves a pair of tweezers, and we'll just test this now for the length. So we've got 2 pre-drilled holes on the inside there, so we might be able to just waggle that into one side. Check it for length. Will it fit into the other hole? Hopefully. Yes, it will. Now we can just do what we did before. Just add a little bit of glue with a piece of wire. So if I just get my piece of wire and a piece of paper out again, little blob of glue on there, and I'm just going to apply it to one side and the other just to secure that into position. So there you go, that's how you can easily hop up a wagon chassis. Now I could convert it to another type which has got the clasp brakes, Maybe even next episode I might do that when I come round to painting it. And of course, one other thing that needs to be added to this are the vacuum pipes at each end of the wagon. So there you go, that's how you can add detail to a ready-to-run wagon that you can get easily and availably from us on our website, worldofrailways.co.uk. Check out our latest subscription deals, bag yourself a wagon, a few little extra bits and bobs. Hey presto, you've got a great layout ready wagon.
I love building laser cut kits. All the hard work done for you, all you have is the fun of assembly. Now, not all kits are like this and 4mm scale, but actually they all work in pretty much the same way. So if I'm confident I can stick together something as complicated as a bungalow, then moving up a little bit, I can stick something together that's as simple as a baseboard. This is a laser cut baseboard kit. It's 3 foot by 2 foot roughly, it's the metric equivalent, and as you can see all my parts are pre-cut for me. Now I have said many times I am the world's worst woodworker. I love to think I can do it properly, but the truth is I'm never quite as accurate as I'd like to be, and baseboards matter. A pair of these baseboards will cost you about the same as a full fat class 66 with sound, perhaps a little bit less. But it matters so much because when you're building your layout, if the baseboard is good, then everything else becomes a lot easier. The running becomes better. You don't spend all your time fiddling around on corners and on baseboard joints. So what I've got is I've got all the parts here in front of me for one baseboard. Let's have a go at making it. The thicker pieces are the edges. It's about 9mm plywood this has been cut in. I do like plywood baseboards. My experience are they tend to stay square and flat, and you can chuck them around in and out of the car, take them to exhibitions, and they generally behave themselves quite well. Do try and avoid things like fiberboard and because that can soak up water and it can swell, or MDF, which is heavy, although it is very stable. If you're building a home layout, you know, and weight isn't an issue, MDF has a lot of advantages in terms of once you put it there, it generally stays put. Right, thinner stuff is the 6mm stuff is for the inner spars on this baseboard, and we'll start with the top, and I've got the top upside down. I'm not going to need very many tools for this. I'm going to need a hammer. Most importantly, I'm going to need a mallet because I'm going to be noshing bits of wood together. Don't hit wood with a hammer, you will mark it. You hit it with a mallet, and hopefully the area that actually does the hitting will make sure that you don't mark the surface. I'm also going to need some PVA glue. I've just got, this says wood adhesive on there, and therefore I know it is suitable for gluing wood together. Any PVA adhesive will do. Basically, go to the DIY store and you'll find just the stuff you need. Right, all this wood has got writing etched into it to tell you what the sizes are. It's not really something we need. It's great for the manufacturers because they can have mountains of this stuff sat on the shelf and know what they're dealing with. So I'll start with the central spar, and plenty glue. Don't stint on the glue because it's cheap and you want your baseboard to stay together. That just slots into the pre-made holes, and they are quite tight, which is why we have a mallet. Look at that. I would say a very sensible move, if you've not built one of these before, is to slot it together without glue, a so-called dry run. And the reason you do that is simply to understand how all the bits will go together. You can pretty much be confident with something like this that it will go together firm enough to stay together while you're working, and you don't need the glue. You do want the glue for when your final fit. Plenty of noise there. That's annoying the sound man, but that'll give him something to worry about later. And here we have it, our central spars, nicely cut. I say, I don't think you can cut anything like as accurately as this, or at least I know I can't cut wood as accurately as this, because this is all spot on square in all dimensions. Not just square around there, or square around there, it's square across the cut as well. So I put this together and I can be confident that that's going to be pretty accurate. Okay, now the other thing you'll notice is you've got these holes in here. These are for moving wires between baseboards. They're not there for lightning because, quite frankly, the weight of this wood is negligible. In fact, the baseboard itself doesn't weigh very much. But what you do is, if you want to if you want to run wires across the layout, you just push hard on them and they will break and they will break out. I think you can probably see that if I spin that one around. There you are. Look, I've got a wooden wheel and a hole for my wires to go through. Won't worry about that for the minute. Running a bead of glue along there and along there and a bit in there. The stuff will splurge out at the sides. That's just how it works. Right, look at that. Straight in. Couple of taps. Okay, again, slots in nicely. A little bit of a tap. And, right. Now this is where it gets tricky, because I've got to locate all the tabs in the slots, and once they're located, they're tight enough that do make sure everything is properly home. And then I can turn the baseboard around and do exactly the same thing on this side. So again, quick line up. I say, do make sure that everything is properly pushed home, because that's how the manufacturer designed it, and that will make sure that it's nice and accurate. Now, pinning and gluing, I do like a bit of belt and braces with this sort of thing. So I will be using 20mm panel pins, and I'm not actually going to use that many of them, because I don't think my experience is, once it's held together and the glue dries, there we are, that's in. That corner is not going to go anywhere. There we are, that's that corner. The plywood is really, really top-notch quality. Plywood does vary in enormous amounts. The stuff you use for boarding up a shop, for example, doesn't need to be a particularly good quality. Once you've got a good, strong, square baseboard, the next important thing is to work out how you're going to join it to another baseboard, and most importantly, how you're going to align the two baseboards. It's not a problem at the moment. Don't care really how well they line up, but I do care once I've got track and scenery on them. I want them to line up exactly the same way every single time. Now, these baseboards are supplied with some rather nifty little poke out pins that fit into the end of the baseboard, and then there's a hole in the next baseboard. You push the two together and that's them lined up. There'll be some catches or a bolt. I haven't worked out exactly what I'm going to use on the outside of this one. Fitting these in the good old days used to involve lots of clever carpentry, stuff that was far too clever for me. Now all it needs is a power drill, a big drill bit, and I must admit I bought the drill bit that was required for these from the same manufacturer because I knew it would all work, but the drill bit's going to last forever and I shall doubtless use it on other jobs. There is there's a pre-made hole in the end of the baseboard here to indicate where I need to drill my hole. That's my hole drilled. Let's blow that away. And all I do is I take the insert, poke it in the hole with an Allen key, twist it gently. It locates into the wood. I can screw the steel pokey thing in the end, and that will line up in the hole on the next baseboard. Now, you don't want to be seeing me drilling lots of holes, so as it happens, here's one I did earlier. I fitted 2 pins, slide those 2 boards together, poke them in the hole that are drilled, and there we have it. There is my 6-foot long layout. Less than an hour's work to get this far, from unpacking the bits to having the baseboard ready. And there we are, I've got a good, solid, firm, square base for my model. So at least that's one thing I'm not going to have to worry about. Yes, it's a few quid, but you know what? This is going to make building my model so much more enjoyable.
And that's it for this episode. If you'd like to share your modelling projects with us, send us an email to brm@warnersgroup.co.uk. And don't forget to visit our website, worldofrailways.co.uk, for our exclusive wagon subscription gifts. And until next month, enjoy your modelling.